say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. I guess we could ask ourselves, how many times have we done this before? But that's another subject I just thought about on my own there. Is it possible to take the definition of insanity and apply it to the word religion? Religion is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
Yeah. We could be very accusational and say the Sunday morning routine bears little fruit. We could also be realistic and say the Saturday afternoon routine also can bear little fruit if it's just a routine, a repetition of what we've already done.
Yeah. Now, with that being said, the subject that we're actually going to discuss today for a little while, or at least this is the plan, is our youth. So I've been thinking about this because this program, this 30 minutes that you and I have, is actually my last official thing that I do before I turn my whole attention to Revive. I just looked at the schedule as it came in on my email, and I'm already tired just by looking at the schedule of what I have to do in 3 days that I'll be there with a number of others on a team that I have. But I remember growing up in church. Now, your religious, quote unquote, religious experience and mine are very much different. But yet, there was a part of that you walked away from for a time. Is it possible for us to be turned off by a religious experience as a youth only to reestablish the same kind of religious experience, but with a different day and a different diet?
I can give you an example.
Okay.
I'm in my junior year, I think, of high school, and I invited a girl from high school that I'd known since the second grade. We were talking about church or something other in school, and she had some interest, and I said, on a Wednesday night, would you like to come? Sure. My younger sister Leanne was she'd often ride with me. I drove over, picked the girl up, took her to church. She didn't just sit and watch it was a y'all come choir type thing on a Wednesday night. She's standing up in the choir singing right along with everybody else. And I thought, wow. And it kind of surprised me. It surprised a lot of people because she was Black. She was the only Black person in the entire church. And she came back with me on following Wednesday nights. That continued without any issue until the pastor called Leanne and I into his office and let us know that in no certain terms that she ever to come back. And I could not have been more disappointed. Otherwise, this man was a great man, a man of prayer, a man of anointed preaching, etc. But he was very, very old school. And his reasoning was he had already had such a situation in another church. And he says, if you worship with her, you will end up marrying her. Or, as he put it, if you worship with, quote unquote, them, y'all will end up marrying, quote unquote, them. In other words, the problem was an interracial marriage. And he said, it's already split one church wide open that I pastored before, and I will not have it again. My parents totally disagreed with that entire presentation of thought. But they weren't going to leave that particular church.
Mhm.
But I really, really struggled. I lost a great deal of enthusiasm. I had to tell my friend that I couldn't bring her back. I was crushed. She was crushed. And then you would think, well, did you do the same thing? No, I didn't do the same thing racially. I have learned very early on, no one determines what their skin color is or their gender is when they're born. You cannot decide that. People are people. You love them. And they may come from a different background, different color, etc., racial, ethnic profiling, or not profiling, background, wrong word there, Barry. But I love them. I just love people.
Yeah.
I don't care what color they are.
Yeah.
So, but the ones I have profiled or done wrongly, in my mind, are those that we're speaking about today. And we've used terms, not racial terms, but derogatory terms like snowflakes, and to describe a generation of young folks who are completely different than me and you, Mike. I hate to tell you, but you're not as young as you used to be. So I mean, their mindset, their world understanding, their worldview and perspective, they have been trained to think, perceive, and respond completely different than we all have.
Yeah. Yeah. To the point that when I bring up social media, I know that I can't say Facebook because, that's old school. So I just have to say social media. Let me go back to this religious thing, and then we can move on from there. So, what you described to me in this person that you invited to your church was basically a people, or at least the pastor was doing this, stating one thing, or we could say singing one thing, but doing something different. Okay, because as a pastor of a Church of God church that you were in, somewhere along the way, some children's program was singing red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in his sight. But what the pastor was saying is they're precious in his sight, but not mine. And if I know anything about youth from the point of ancient memories that I have of being one, is that youth see through hypocrisy. Adulthood, I remember a person I know that used to say that cynicism was the poison of adulthood. It's a true statement. But blindness to hypocrisy is what you just kind of accept as you go through into adulthood. And this is why I love working with youth so much. And that's not just a statement. Okay? I'm not just trying to state that. I really do enjoy, and the young adult group is really my favorite one to work with. And the reason I do is because they're honest. They're going to tell you the truth. And sometimes it's in ways that you might not want to know. It's not always verbal. They're going to tell you the truth by not showing up for the second session because they saw through your hypocrisy in the first session.
Absolutely. I hear you.
Yeah. I mean, I come at this from prior experience of growing up in a religious system. And this is why my question is, has the Messianic Hebrew roots movement become, in a way, just another religious experience that is, in the end, as Shaul would say to Timothy, void of the power of the gospel. So if you have an experience that is void of the power of the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, the gospel moving in your midst, then you're coming together basically for your own good feelings and emotions.
Roger Daltrey with the Who saying many years ago something along the lines of the new boss is the same as the old boss. It's amazing that for all of the push for change, renewal, better, different, things change very little. You are often quoting
Will Rogers.
Will Rogers. I kept wanting to say Will Smith.
I've never quoted Will Smith. I don't know anything he's ever said that's worth quoting. So, Will Rogers, Will Rogers, the prophet of Oklahoma, said, "People change, but not much."
Not much. Mike, we came out of systems, groups, denominations, whatever term you want to use, and we were filled with angst and anger and bitterness and rage, all kinds of negative emotions, and some of it rightly so. I mean, there were some things that we had a right to be upset about. Some things were more personal than righteous. Are we at, and I'll ask a question to answer your question. Are we any different? Have we just recreated what we came out of with different sections or different issues?
Yeah.
And when we haven't not changed, then younger generations look at us and say, I don't see a difference. Now, you would think, well, we raised our children in the Hebraic Roots movement, and they don't know what it was like where we came from. My daughters do.
Mm-hmm.
They remember. And I get challenged on occasion. I had someone at House of David that this couple communicated with me and shared some information, some encouragement, some suggestions. I have the list here. And one of the things was we have to be careful that we do not speak derogatorily of younger generations as if they are across the board problematic. And that we fault them for how they are and how how they've been trained to be, just because that's who they are. Because they get tired of hearing what's wrong with their generation. When there are some bright minds, a lot of energy, a lot of desire, if you can help them to find it, there's a lot of passion and ability. They have some good ideas. Just because it's a different way, I look at a young man in public with a man beard and a bun on the back of his head and skinny jeans tightly wrapped around his ankles and the big spacers in his ears, and I just want to go, oh, what are you doing? Well, he didn't grow up in my generation, and I haven't grown up in his. And before I judge him by his outward presentation, I have to remember that he can very well judge me by mine.
Mm-hmm.
So neither one of us know each other. And we're going to see things differently. But I have to be willing to give him the same ability to speak and me listening, not listening, preparing to tell him what he needs to hear, but listening to hear what he's trying to say. The same as I would have wanted when I had that pastor and that conversation. I wish he would have heard what I had to say instead of already being so adamant at his viewpoint that he couldn't hear a different perspective.
Well, see, this is one of the things that I try to do with youth is that the youth do not want to be spoken at. Many people want to talk at them instead of talking to them. Talking to someone is figuring out a place of relationship, and then being able to be relevant on their terms. You know, I do not have to enter into the generation that I'll be speaking to. The last thing you're going to see me in is skinny jeans and a man bun. Okay,
I'd love to have a picture of that.
It ain't happening. Okay, it's just not happening.
Right here on my wall, Mike, for motivation.
Yeah, for darts. You know, I don't need to try to become. You know, I know what Shaul said, but I think that the words have been totally misinterpreted when he said, "I have become all things to all men, so that I may win some." Yeah. I don't believe that meant he went out and, you know, went to the local restaurant with a bunch of Gentiles and ordered bacon wrapped shrimp. Okay, he never violated the commandments. But what was he saying there to me? He became relevant to the person. He became interested in the person. He became interested in the interests of the person, and then used that as a foundation and then a springboard to begin a relationship that would then earn him the right to speak into a person's life regarding truth. So, you know, this whole thing about youth ministry, you normally consider youth ministry as what I've seen in the church, and I actually the only job that I've ever been turned down for in my life was that of a youth pastor. Why? Because at the time I was in my 40s. This is a long time ago. Not that long ago. I was in my late. Yeah, actually, I was in my late 20s, early 30s. Yeah, that's right.
Oh yeah, now that was a really long time ago.
That was a long time ago. But they thought I was too old for the job. So what do? You find somebody that just came out of Bible school, that has no life experience, that has no way to communicate anything of life experience, and then you put them into a youth group to try to teach them about life experience. See, I think the greatest person to speak to youth is an elder. Because an elder is able to instill and impart wisdom into youth. And at the same time, the youth are able to instill and impart energy into the elder. I just had this conversation a couple of days ago with mutual friend Dave Altman, that this is about what the scripture talks about. You know, Moshe and Joshua were separated by what, 60 years probably? Do you think somewhere in that area?
Probably.
But yet these two men worked together in such a way that when it came time for Moshe to step back, it was Joshua who stepped in. Why? Because the two had worked together. The wisdom of Moshe, the energy of Yehoshua, This was a perfect team. But yet somehow in our this thing that we have, it's, well, we have to have, an older person speaking to older people and a younger person speaking to young people. I think it should be the other way around. I think that if you have a meeting for senior adults, you probably ought to call one of your youth to come in and speak to them, to challenge them instead of comfort them. Just all of you, you're almost to death. I just want to make sure you're comfortable until you get there. I don't want to. I want to have some young person that's challenging me to still be alive. It's this. Don't quit living until you quit breathing.
I've told people many times, as long as there's breath in the body, I pray for life. I may need to amend that just a little bit if they're willing to live. There are some folks that have just given up on life.
Oh, yeah.
And they really don't have anything to live for. They don't want anything to live for, and they are just. And if they get to a place where illness is about to take them, sometimes it may be, if you're not willing to live, you just wanted to exist. Crossing the veil is not a defeat. Sometimes it's a promotion to another chapter of life that is more meaningful to you. Laura and I were coming home last night after being with my oldest grandchild who turned 11.
Yes, I saw that.
And Laura was remarking about how fast time is going.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to believe that this little girl, I was just thinking, I watched her take her first steps in a room down the hall here.
Mm-hmm.
I remember all of those cute personality things that she's done over the years, and I've watched her grow up into this amazing young lady. Mm-hmm. And how did that happen? How did 11 years go by so fast? And Lauren was talking to me, I'm thinking this has been a long year for me personally. It's like, man, time's dragging on. Laura said, it's never gone faster.
Yeah.
It's just speeding up. It's getting faster. And I'm thinking, time is consistent here. There are those that would argue one way or the other on that.
Yeah, they said that, yes, somewhere along the way, a few days ago, there was some event that happened in Missouri or whatever that caused the Earth to speed up a little bit. I don't know. I didn't follow that one. So,
so anyway, time does not. What I'm trying to say is those that we're looking down on as a younger generation, and that's typical. An older generation typically looks down on because they're not sharing the same values and so forth. But should Messiah tarry, and I believe it's going to take a little longer than we're hoping for the kingdom to come. I pray it comes this year, but my understanding is it's out there a little bit yet. Then those that are younger than us now are going to be stepping into our roles. We're needing to get out of the way to give them the opportunity to lead, just like others prepared a path for us and then stepped aside and let us take it. If we don't train and equip them, if we don't give them reality understanding, if we don't model inclusion and help, if we're not raising them up, then we're dumping a load on them that they're going to be ill prepared to handle. So rather than criticize for differences, we need to train and equip and model. Easier said than done.
Well,
We're different. Okay, get over it.
okay.
We're different. So there are certain scriptural, biblical models and things and principles and values that are consistent across all generations. Let's focus on those. There's nothing wrong with saying, to a young person, somebody that you're going to need to groom into a role of leadership. When you go to a hospital room and someone is dying, these are some things you do and some things you don't do. When you do a wedding, when you go to encourage someone who's broken down, when you're on the phone, talking, and you put it on speakerphone so you can scroll through Facebook while you're talking to somebody on the phone. When somebody's life is breaking apart and they're listening for some godly counsel from you, scrolling while you're talking is not going to help them. And we do that. It's not just them, it's us. We all do that kind of stuff. We need to get rightly focused. We need to train. We need to groom. We need to model. Otherwise, something may break apart and not get fixed.
Well, you say that things are different. I tend to disagree with that statement, Barry. That the same temptations that Yeshua had in the wilderness is the same temptations that Adam and Eve had. Is the same temptations that Cain and Abel had. Same temptations that every generation has. It just comes out in little different ways. I mean, the things have not changed that much. The media and the way things are done has not changed that much. You talk about not speaking, like they're called the snowflakes and all these things, and I've used those terms, but I think if anybody would go back and listen to my recordings, when I did, I also put in, they're basically doing what they were taught by their by their parents and their friends around them and the older people. I mean, if you have a generation called snowflake, take a look at the cloud that it came from. Okay?
Well put.
Yeah, that's original, by the way. But here's a final statement for me, Barry. Probably, I think it would be good for all of us to try to take an honest assessment of that which turned us off in life to religion, to other areas of life maybe, but we're speaking directly to religion today. Take an honest assessment of what turned you off and don't recreate it and try to give it to your youth. If it stunk, some sprinkles on top is not going to make the stink go away.
No.
All right. If it didn't work, then I was thinking about this morning. Here's my continued final. I don't know why I woke up with this thing. I guess it must have been a meme from somebody or whatever. The old song that we used to sing, "Give Me That Old Time Religion." You remember that one? Yeah. It was good for Paul and Silas, but yet the religion that you're singing about, you're not living. So if your songs aren't lining up with your life, quit singing.
And it would go for songs describing uber passion and super love for the Father. I just want to be in your presence. I just want to sit in your lap. I just want to hug your neck, etc. If that's not real, then, like you say, quit singing.
Yeah, probably the only one that I know that sings that and actually means it is my cousin Melanie.
I could see that Melanie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess my closing thought is this, Mike. Regardless of who you're dealing with, speaking to, relating to, honesty goes a long ways. If you're honest, if you admit, I don't understand where you're coming from, can you help me? Rather than throw up your hands and say, I just disagree with that. There's another way of going about it, and that's to say, I'm not getting your perspective. I'm not understanding. Can you explain where you're coming from a little differently? And try to listen. And we all do this. We listen to respond. Someone's talking to us, and while they're talking to us, we're not listening. We watch their lips moving. We hear the vocals. We're not really hearing what they're saying because we're formulating our response. And if you watch people, you're talking to them and they go, and they'll hold their breath a little bit and they've already got their response. At that point, they've stopped listening. So we
What'd you say?
Yeah. So listening to hear instead of formulating a response.
Yeah.
I'm finished with this, Mike. Dr. Sukina gave this story a number of years ago to us. He said he asked a question of an elder and his family's tribe in Alaska. And the elder did not respond. He just kept walking. And his initial thought was, well, he wasn't listening to me, paying attention to me. He doesn't care what I said. Days later, 2-3 days later, the elder came back and gave him an answer to his question. And when he asked him, he said, I thought you were just kind of brushing me off. I didn't think you heard me or were willing to listen to me. He said, did you want a quick answer or did you want me to think about it and come back with an answer that meant something? Something, and that's a paraphrase, but that's the gist of what was being said. Sometimes they're asking questions that they don't want us to have a ready answer for. Sometimes they're looking for us to say, you got a legitimate point. That's a legitimate question. I need a little time to think and pray about that. And whatever you do, don't drop it. You have to think and pray about it and get back to them. Give them a time frame. Can you give me a day to pray about that? Can you give me 2 days to pray about that? And then come back. If you never get back with them, you lost them.
Yeah. Well, maybe the question was not to bring forth an answer, but was to bring forth a dialogue. Judaism's good about that.
Absolutely.
Questions bring forth dialogue. So, well, if anyone's interested, the Revive 2022, they can go to Hebrew Roots Network, type in something like that, Revive 22. It is going to be live streamed. The main events, the main general sessions of one which I will be speaking on Friday morning from 10:30 to 11:30. Those will be live streamed. The youth and stuff. We're doing things behind closed doors. Not to tell anybody about.
Any speed dating this year, Mike?
No.
Inside joke from last year.
Inside joke, and Cletus is not going to be there either. So,
oh well, maybe next year.
Never know. All right.
Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for sharing on your social media pages, for encouraging others to watch, and for your comments and questions. We look forward to those. Mike travels safely. Y'all go with you. Give you great words that will have life impact. Look forward to hearing the report.
All right.
Shalom, everyone. Have a great day.